My name is Dr. Jack Lewis. I'm a neuroscientist, and I'm on a journey to understand everything there is to know about the human brain. The human brain is the most complex part of our body. Many mysteries remain about how this most vital of vital organs controls every aspect of our lives. But over the last few decades, our knowledge has expanded in leaps and bounds.
That was a shock to the system.
Now we're getting ready to push it to the limits, finding out how our brains react to unusual conditions and surprising challenges.
This is the strangest experience of my life.
Let's do it. I'm setting out on a journey. A journey to meet some people with remarkable neurological conditions.
One of the most common questions is, how is it wired to your brain?
That give us a unique insight into the inner workings of the brain.
I discovered people who are able to remember almost every day of their life.
In this episode, I'll mesmerize your mind with an exploration of language.
I think that one's Booba.
That's Kiki.
Imagine if you woke up and found you could only speak a foreign language.
And I woke up from a coma speaking fluent French.
Or if everyone suddenly thought you were foreign, even when you're speaking your own language.
And the gentleman 2 seats back said, "Excuse me, are you visiting? Are you from Russia?" And I'm going, why do people keep telling me I sound strange?
We'll meet a language neuroscientist at the very frontier of her science who's putting her own brain through its paces.
March.
And magician Pete Heat casts a spell that could leave you speechless.
Matt's new Chukwunaka.
What's going on deep inside your head? Join me to uncover the secrets of the brain. Chin chin. From the moment we wake up in the morning, we are bombarded with language. Be it a friendly hello from a neighbour, a newscaster on the television, or a text message from a friend. But how do our brains do it? Neuroscience has long been fascinated by the question of how our brains produce and understand speech, and it's only just beginning to unpick the finer details. The human brain has a unique and extraordinary capacity for language that no other species on Earth is capable of. Whether we're speaking, reading, or writing, language enables us to express a seemingly infinite number of thoughts and ideas. In fact, some experts even believe that language itself is what makes us human. But language is an ability we sometimes take for granted, as magician Pete Heat is about to find out with some members of the public.
Have you ever been hypnotised before?
I haven't.
Would you like to be? Yeah, you sound. Can you come closer to me? You guys stay where you are, but you come and stand about here. The reason I'm separating you is I don't want you girls to get hypnotised as well. I want this all to be focused on you. So you close your eyes for me, okay? When you open your eyes in a second, not yet, but in a second when you open your eyes, you're not going to be able to read. Okay? Okay. Picture an alphabet so you can see all the letters, and imagine them all, they all just start to mix up and jumble up until they're all entangled, and they kind of, yeah, basically not in the normal order. So imagine the letters just swimming around. You can keep your eyes closed for a second actually, but I've got some cards here, like flashcards with different words printed on them. I'll show you guys in a second. Do you know that word?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, cool. And can you read out what you can see there?
Pirawalagat.
Okay, Pirawalagat.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, cool, that's the one. Okay, cool. All right, let's try, we'll do a couple more. You know that word? Yeah, okay. What does that say?
S. I can't pronounce that.
So one more. That word you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And if you could read that.
Matt's new Chukwunaka.
Okay. If you could just read that out to me.
Kuchesny.
Okay, one more, this is the last one. All right,
Okay.
You know that word?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And if you could just read out what you see there.
Apulos.
Apple sauce.
Apple sauce. It's gibberish to me.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to count down from 3 to 1. On 1, you're going to be able to read again, okay?
Okay.
3, 2, 1. What does that say now?
Applause.
No? Woo, yeah.
Well, I thought I could read them. I just thought they were words I didn't know. I just thought they must have just been made up words or something like another language. But yeah, no, it's weird. Didn't like it.
It was coming off in gibberish to me. It was, I couldn't pronounce half the words.
I feel like we wouldn't be able to explain what just happened with the magician and how we felt about it if it wasn't for the language.
Well, if that happened to me, if that actually happened, if my reading capabilities were taken from me, then it would ruin my future.
Now, this may just be a cunning trick, but Pete makes an important point here. We rely so much on our ability to understand and interpret language that it's impossible to really imagine life without it. Thanks to our sophisticated language skills, most of us can express ourselves and understand others effortlessly and efficiently every day. Pete's magic plays on how bewildering it can be when this process is interrupted. So just imagine losing the ability to speak or understand language. I'm on my way to meet someone whose extraordinary story made headlines around the world and left neurolinguists baffled.
And I woke up from a coma speaking fluent French.
Impossible as it might sound, Englishman Rory Curtis came out of a coma speaking what was described as perfect French. This remarkable neural episode began after a terrible car accident.
I was doing a pickup for a company I used to work for. I don't really have any recollection of how it happened.
He suffered horrific injuries.
I had a traumatic brain injury. I was in a coma for 2 weeks.
Doctors discovered he'd suffered a complex brain hemorrhage. Blood vessels had burst inside his head and blood was leaking into his brain. Medics won the battle to save his life, but what happened next, no one could have expected. 4 years on from the accident, I'm meeting Rory to find out the rest of his story.
I don't remember much from waking up. People told me that I'd spoke fluent French.
You just woke up able to speak French?
Just woke up able to speak fluent French and no idea why. When people told me, I just thought they were making a joke out of me, making fun.
Amazingly, despite knowing very little French, when Rory came round, it was the only language he was able to speak. So, how in the world did you manage to speak fluent French?
I have no idea.
That's an incredible story.
I didn't believe it at first, because C grade, year 9 student at 14 years old isn't the Einstein of speaking French, to be fair.
Rory's only real exposure to the French language was from a couple of years studying at high school, but the nurse at his bedside when he first came around was a native French speaker.
My parents told me that. And one of the nurses went up to my parents and says, whereabouts in France are you from? And my mother's half Irish and my dad's British. She said, well, we've had a conversation with Rory last night, a good half-hour conversation of, it wasn't an Englishman speaking French. It weren't just a boy from school trying to speak his French.
Wow.
I know.
And this entire conversation took place in fluent French?
Fluent in a particular dialect from France.
Have you got any idea what you actually said?
I was just asking about why I was at the hospital, what had happened to me, where my parents were.
So exactly the kind of things that one would expect a person to ask
yeah, exactly.
as soon as they wake up from a coma.
Exactly.
Doctors and nurses were astounded. Given Rory's critical injuries, it's remarkable that he was even talking. But the big mystery now is, why in the world was it in French? The most incredible thing about your story, for me, is that you somehow, through the brain injury and the coma, unlocked all of this vocabulary that you must have put in at a very young age, plus all of the rules and regulations as to how to string those words together in a way that makes a coherent conversation take place. It's utterly phenomenal. When you learn a second language, the vocabulary and grammar appears to involve brain activations in a slightly different location to when you speak in your mother tongue. So perhaps Rory's brain trauma temporarily knocked out the key parts of his brain's native language capacity, and the French he'd once learned was then allowed to come to the fore. Something that happened between the accident and being in the coma somehow unlocked this latent ability to speak a language. Happily, Rory's made an amazing recovery. But what caused his temporary bilingual skills still hasn't been fully explained. So is Rory still able to speak perfect French? So how's your French now?
Apparently, after speaking to her, I says good night to her in French. When I went back to sleep and woke up the next morning, I wouldn't even say I was speaking English again. I was like, in the sense that I was just slurring. So I went from speaking a fluent language in a particular dialect and having a perfect conversation to not even being able to speak English properly the next morning.
Rory's amazing experience shows us how damage to one part of the brain can potentially lead to increased activity in other areas, which can sometimes result in surprising and unexpected effects. But the reality is that recovery from brain injury can often leave patients facing a long journey to recover their use of language. Coming up, we'll meet someone afflicted with the unusual condition, foreign accent syndrome.
Some people will say I'm French, German, Lithuanian, Hungarian, Russian, and when I say where I'm from, they still don't believe.
What Rory's unusual experience suggests is that just maybe different brain areas are used for storing our everyday language and a second language. And that has inspired some fascinating research. Neuroscientists are using new techniques to probe how the human brain processes language. From the basic level of constructing words from their root letters and sounds to the more complex task of composing sentences. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Before we explore the latest cutting-edge research, there's an intriguing test that demonstrates just how intuitively we recognise our primary language. Thanks for agreeing to have a go at our little demos. This is all about speech and language and such like. All I need you to do, without thinking very hard about it, is to just quickly read through these paragraphs. Read it out loud.
Out loud?
Yep.
Please allow me to let you in on one of the most amazing secrets of the brain. Language is such a powerful tool in the human mind. The words can be jumbled up and yet they still appear clear to our brains.
She's making a pretty good go of it, but just look at what she's reading. The letters are a complete jumble. How about paragraph 2?
It doesn't matter what all the letters in the words are. The only important thing is that the first and last letters are in the right place.
The effect is quite startling. Amazingly, as long as the first and last letters of the word are in the correct position, we recognise them almost instinctively.
The rest can be a total mess and you can still read it without problem. This is because we don't read every letter.
The grammar and context of the words also adds a lot. So if you're fairly fluent in the language, you barely even notice how jumbled up the words are.
This is because we don't read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole.
Well done. It's like you shouldn't be able to get that first up, but then when you're reading it, it's just, you get it. Apart from that one word I missed, but yeah, you get it completely.
There is no magic or trickery. This is just your brain doing what it does naturally, so brilliantly.
Yeah.
Are you impressed with yourself?
I am. I'm very impressed with myself.
So you should be. Have a go yourself. See how easily you can read these cards. So what does the jumbled up words test actually show us? Well, it suggests that the human mind identifies the overall shape of the word form more than the order of the individual letters themselves. This has led to the idea that children learning to read should be taught to recognise whole word forms as well as their component letters and sounds. The words we write down and say to each other are basically symbols that we use to represent things, thoughts and ideas which allow us to express ourselves.
Language is basically our way of communicating with each other using abstract symbols. So we can often think of language in terms of speech, but we know, for instance, when people are deaf, that you can actually speak using your hands and so on. So language isn't just about hearing and moving the mouth, it's actually something far more abstract about that. We can think of language really as transferring ideas from one person's head into somebody else's head.
But how have the words we've traditionally used to symbolise different thoughts or concepts come into being in the first place? Here's two new concepts, two shapes to be specific. They each have names. One is called Booba and the other is called Kiki. Which do you think is which? Although the words are made up and the shapes don't represent anything in particular, a remarkable 95% of people name the pointy shape Kiki and the curvy one Booba. All you have to do is just say, and there's no right or wrong answer, which is which out of these two.
I think that one's Booba.
That's Kiki. That's Booba.
Kiki and Booba. Amazingly, no matter where the test is done in the world or in what language, the Booba-Kiki effect seems to hold. And this effect isn't just limited to shapes. Let's see what happens when we present our volunteers with different tasting food and drinks.
Booba, Kiki.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Why?
Because it's sharper.
It's got edges to its texture.
Which name goes best with which fluid?
Same again. That one's Kiki, and that one's Booba.
Kiki, well, it's sharp and explosive, just kind of like sparkling water.
Now let's try the chocolate. Go ahead, whichever one you want to try first.
That one's Kiki.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was more crunchy. I'm going to go with, so that gets the Kiki, because it's more crunchy, and Kiki sounds more brittle, the word.
The word Booba, whether it's the sound that it makes when you utter it, or whether it's how you imagine it being written, B-O-U-B-A, big rounded letters, somehow that naturally lends itself to a softer cheese like brie, to still rather than sparkling water, to milk chocolate rather than the more brittle, bitter dark chocolate. Intriguingly, this may suggest that the world's thousands of languages, developed over many millennia, didn't emerge at random. Human brains attach consistent meaning to certain sounds. The Booba-Kiki demonstration reveals the complexity of the neural processes involved in how we use words. Freshly fried flesh. To dig deeper, I now want to find out which areas of the brain are most important when we use language. So I've come to meet Dr. Magdalena Slowinska. Hey Magda, how you doing?
Hello Jack, I'm fine, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having us in your lab. She's going to help me pinpoint exactly where language, and in particular speech production, takes place in the brain.
What we know now is that there are many brain regions that are involved in language. And it depends on the language process that you are interested in, whether it's speech or comprehension or reading, that different parts of the brain light up.
Magda can help us to demonstrate that the different aspects of language are taken care of by quite separate parts of the brain, using an astonishing technique called TMS, or transcranial magnetic stimulation. I've never actually touched a TMS machine before, so I know that somehow a magnetic field is produced via this amazing device, but how does it actually work?
Sure, so a very strong current is sent by the main body of the TMS machine, and it goes through the coil to temporarily and non-invasively disrupt neural information processing.
TMS is a relatively recent innovation that can stimulate brain cells, specifically neurons, in the outer layer at the surface of the brain just beneath the skull. Neurons communicate by sending electrical signals down their length in order to influence the next neuron in the chain. Those signals can be disrupted by the focused magnetic field produced by TMS.
So this is the software that allows us to track the coil and place it in a precise point on my head.
Magda's kindly offered to demonstrate the effect on her own brain, and it can be quite startling.
First, we take some points from my head and we map them on my structural scan.
Okay. Once it's all lined up, we're going to focus this powerful magnetic field onto one of the key brain areas involved in language.
Excellent. This is the pedal that you will use to trigger the pulses. The frequency that we're going to use is 4 Hertz.
So what's next? I have to aim for your brokers. I've got the red dot over the green crosshair.
Yes.
I'm aiming the magnetic field at what's known as Broca's area, an acorn-sized region of the brain that's particularly crucial when we're speaking. So once I get it absolutely in the middle and I can hold it for 2 seconds, you want me to push the pedal, but what will you be doing whilst I'm doing that?
Jack, I'm going to be saying months of a year. And at some point, you just hit the pedal.
With the TMS probe accurately positioned to the millimetre, I'm about to disrupt the neurons in the Broca's area of Magda's brain.
Okay, January, February, March, June, July, August.
Wow. That was a pretty dramatic demonstration because I couldn't see your face. I was like, what's she doing? I almost totally forgot the purpose of the experiment.
It was not painful, it was just speech disruption.
You went January, February, March, and then you were on it. You were trying to say April, but you couldn't. You were trying to say May, but you couldn't.
I think so, yes. I was trying to say those months. I think I got the first sound and I got stuck suddenly.
Although Magda was trying her hardest to say the months March, April and May, she simply couldn't get the words out. Inside her brain, with the TMS aimed directly at a special zone within Broca's area, it disrupted her ability to produce speech. However, another important language area known as Wernicke's area was unaffected by this TMS treatment. Wernicke's is known to be vital for understanding and comprehending the meaning of language.
Can we do it again?
Go.
January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August.
Wow. This demonstration dramatically proves that different parts of the brain handle different aspects of language, and that the process of saying words is distinct from understanding them. Magda's research is uncovering intriguing details about other aspects of language too, such as reading. She's found that disrupting a brain area involved in how we hear sounds affects people's ability to read, both out loud and silently.
When you look at a written word, your brain is recognizing letters. It is processing sound of a word.
That's interesting. So we're imagining the sound of the words, even though we're not saying anything out loud.
Yes, maybe sometimes unconsciously, but yes. We have shown that your brain starts processing sounds around 80 milliseconds after you see a word on a screen, which is very quickly.
That's really fast.
It's very fast, yeah. And it does this process for another 100 milliseconds. So it means that you recognize sound of a written word within 200 milliseconds.
Wow, that's cool. Next, I want to look closer at written words and see how effective our brains are at recognizing what's written down. So I'm going to show you a sequence of words, and I simply just want you to read them out loud. There's 15 words to read, and I'm timing them. Ready? And go.
Blue, red, yellow,
orange, green,
Blue, orange, blue,
17 seconds. 20 seconds, sir. 21 seconds. Now for the twist. This time, instead of reading out the word,
Oh God.
you have to say the colour of that the font is written in.
Okay.
Okay? So, if you're ready,
I think so.
off we go.
Red, orange, blue.
Purple. Blue. Green.
Blue, green, purple, blue.
Well done, stop. How did you find that?
That was awful.
So what do you make of that? It took you double the amount of time that time.
Double the amount of time to process the... Whoa.
17. It's almost double time.
Oh, don't be hard on yourself. I say 33% slower than last time.
Yeah.
What was going on in your mind?
Just wanting to go into autopilot and just read the word out instead of the colour.
Were you surprised by how hard you found it to blurt out the word compared to the first time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was horrible.
So this is the Stroop effect, and the explanation for this one is because we're so sort of linguistically dominant, you know, reading is a piece of cake for us, and so as soon as you see a word, you just automatically translate it into what it means, and you want to say it out loud.
Yeah.
But then when you're presented with conflicting information, it incurs a bit of a delay where you have to override the urge, in this example, to say the word orange out loud, and instead to discount the meaning of the word and focus on the colour of the font. Time for you to have a go. All you have to do is say the colour that the words are written in out loud and spot which colour comes up the most. Here goes. You ready? That's it. So which colour did you see the most? Answer? It was green. If you thought it was purple, don't worry. That was the actual word which appeared most, but not the colour that appeared most. This test shows that we seem to have a greater instinct for recognising words than we do for colours. A brain function you might expect would be far more fundamental. Language is something our brains take naturally to. So far, we've seen that Rory's remarkable experience, Magda's cutting-edge research, and even Pete's mind tricks all reveal different elements of the incredibly complex system that coordinates human language. The way we use language, using words or symbols to represent objects, actions, feelings, and ideas, is truly remarkable. But if something goes wrong with that, the impact on your life can be devastating. Rory's bizarre story isn't the only unusual language condition to have fascinated the press. Foreign accent syndrome is a rare medical condition in which patients develop what sounds distinctly like a foreign accent and potentially lose an important part of their identity in the process. Kath Lockett once spoke with a clear English accent, but over the course of a week she ended up sounding Polish. So what on earth happened?
I have improved, but I still get asked where I'm from. So some people will say I'm French, German, Lithuanian, Hungarian, Russian, and when I say where I'm from, they still don't believe.
Foreign accent syndrome has been documented in cases around the world, including accent changes from Japanese to Korean, British English to French, American English to British, and Spanish to Hungarian. Some cases have no clear cause, but with Kath, it was the result of a severe neurological episode.
I started with a lisp on a Sunday night. I was talking to my sister-in-law, and like you've been to the dentist, and my head, back of my head was starting to hurt. And by Thursday morning, not only had I lost my speech, which just came out as rubbish, I lost the swallow as well. So it wasn't language, it was just noise. In my head, I thought I was talking, but there was nothing.
Kath was having a suspected stroke and was rushed straight into hospital. Luckily, she survived the potentially life-threatening trauma, which cut off the blood supply to parts of her brain And, after several weeks, her ability to talk returned.
And then when it started to come back, it was more of a lisp, so it was like a duh.
But astonishingly, as her speech started to recover, Kath noticed the heavy accent.
My daughter at the time said, "Come on, Ma, you need to get out." She took me to the Share Gallery in Staffa. One of the ladies working, she said, "We have leaflet for Poland. Is it Polish? Is it Russian? We've got leaflet." And I'm going, my daughter was a bit upset. She goes, "My mom's English, what do you talk about?" She took me back on the bus and I'm whispering and talking together. And then the gentleman 2 seats back said, "Excuse me, are you visiting? Are you from Russia?" And I'm going, why do people keep telling me I sound strange?
Although Kath has no trouble thinking of the words she wants to say, she struggles to get them out.
Hello, can I have a coffee, please?
It's thought that foreign accent syndrome may arise due to stroke damage in Broca's area, which, as we saw earlier, is where we turn words we're thinking about into speech.
February, March.
It might also be something to do with the cerebellum, which coordinates the muscles. In particular, in this case, the movements of the mouth, tongue, lips and vocal cords, over which we have to exert minute control in order to form and produce speech properly.
The brain's got to control movement of the tongue, lips, vocal cords and whatever to get from one sound to the next. So probably the most complex movement control thing that the human brain does. If you just alter that timing very slightly, that's how you end up with the distortion of the sounds, and might cause you to sound like you're speaking another language where the timing is different.
So although it can sound like somebody has picked up a foreign accent, it's just that they're now making a new set of mouth movements which give the words a subtly different sound or accent to the people listening.
When I lost the speech, I was 47. Now I'm 56 and I'm still learning. I can't sing a note anymore. I can't read out loud. I don't say my children's name correct. I don't say my own name correct.
Around about a third of people who survive a stroke have difficulty with the movements to make the sounds for the words they're trying to say. Usually, somebody listening to them would know, oh dear, that person must have had a head injury, had a stroke. But just occasionally, the nature of the changes you get to your speech don't sound as if it's some kind of speech disorder. It sounds as if you've suddenly started speaking with a foreign accent.
Coming up, Kath meets a fellow sufferer and shares with him what her voice used to sound like.
They arrive on time, safely, and without congesting the roads of the further cars.
Understanding language isn't just to do with the words we speak or hear. When humans interact, we place great stock in what we can see too. A person's non-verbal body language adds huge amounts of meaning and nuance to what they've said. Their posture, how they hold their head, for instance, how they move their eyes, lips, and other facial muscles speaks volumes about their thoughts, feelings, and intentions. There's also a very important visual dimension to understanding spoken language. It's not just our ability to read language that's easily disrupted. How we hear words and interpret them can be equally fallible. So you got the headphones? If you stick them on for me. Yep. And have a little look at this. Watch and listen. What's Pete saying?
Ba, 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 ba.
And how would you spell bar?
B-A-A-A-A.
Like a what animal?
Sheep.
Bar like a sheep. Very good. Spell it. B-A-R. Yeah. So let's go again. Keep your eye on his face as he's saying this, and tell me what you're saying this time.
Okay.
Ba, 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 ba.
What was he saying that time?
Far.
Far.
Yeah.
Like what kind of word in the English language does that sound like?
Father.
Far. We're starting with a P.
P-A-R.
Really?
Brilliant.
V-A-R-R.
Yeah. Va. Va.
Yeah.
Did you realise that you were actually hearing the same sound each and every time, ba, with a B for bravo? But what did change was what you were seeing. The second time, Pete's lips were mouthing far with an F. What do you think of that?
I don't understand how that's happened.
Because we're such visual creatures, us humans, the visual cortex is at the back of the brain.
Yeah.
There's a huge territory of sort of brain surface area.
Right.
Whereas the auditory cortex is a much smaller. The bit where you process and hear sounds is much smaller. So we're very visually dominant. So even though you heard ba, ba, ba every single time, when you put the video of him saying fa,
Yeah.
even though you're hearing ba still,
Yeah.
the visual impression dominates the perception and it creates the illusion that the sound is saying fa. Even though the sound of someone's voice is all we need to understand what they're saying, this illusion shows that we interpret spoken language as a combination of audible and visual elements. Check out another illusion that shows you can't always trust what you hear. Sit squarely in front of your screen and listen to this. What do you hear? This auditory illusion, created by a pioneering psychologist called Diana Deutsch, features overlapping syllables in stereo space. As you listen, you'll start to pick out different words. People typically report a huge range of words. Nowhere, window, even mango. What you hear can depend on what's already in your mind. However, none of the words are really there. Your brain is constructing them, making its own sense of the sounds. It can be a very eerie experience. Here's a similar auditory illusion. This time, you have to guess what some scrambled words are saying. So stick those on. I'm going to listen along too. You can hold it. I'm just going to eavesdrop.
Okay.
Could you understand what was said?
No.
No? It was completely unintelligible.
Yeah, no, it was.
So now let's try it again. This is what was hidden in the noise.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah.
That's cool, isn't it?
That is quite cool.
You could clearly hear that he was saying...
You're about to reveal the secrets of your brain?
Very good, very good. Magician Pete Heat wants to make use of the way our brains combine the visual and audible elements of language to try and influence people's behaviour.
So guys, we're going to play a little game in which I'm going to try and influence one of your decisions. Okay, which sounds quite creepy. I'm going to try and control what seems like a free choice, just using my words, using language, gestures, that kind of thing. So it might not work, but it should do because I've practiced a lot. I'm going to ask you to put this in your hand. I'm going to turn away in a second so I can't see. Okay. I'm going to get you to put this in your hand with whichever number you want on top. So say if you did that, that would be 6, obviously. Yeah. And then when you've chosen the number, cover it up like this with your other hand. So when I turn back, I can't see what you've gone for, yeah?
Okay.
Cool. Whichever number you want to go for. Okay, so yeah, cool. All right, okay. You know, I said I was going to be using language to try and influence you. I don't know if you noticed, one of the last things I said just as I turned away was whichever number you want to go for. I just said 4 at the end of the sentence like that. Hopefully that put that number into your head above the others. Is that right? 4, brilliant. I said whichever number you want to go for. So whichever number you want to go for. Okay, yeah. Well, maybe that's just luck. Should we try again? Yeah. Okay, cool. So we'll try one more time, okay?
Yeah. Okay, I've got
Okay,
one.
cool. Can I turn back? Okay. Now, I'm obviously not looking, yeah?
Yeah, you're not looking.
But something I have been doing the whole time I've been turning away is I've been gesturing like this, saying I'm not looking. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put a number into your head. I'm showing you like a big sort of number 5 with my hand like that. Okay, Hopefully that worked. Did that go in on some level? Did you choose 5? Yes, brilliant. But maybe that's just luck. You know, it seems unlikely that would make you choose something, right? And this time I won't gesture at all. I'll put my hands down by my side. Okay, cool. I'm going to turn away. Let me know when you got one. Okay. All right. Okay. If I were you, and especially based on the face that you're pulling there, the face is kind of a go on then, catch me out this time. And normally when that happens, what that means is you haven't changed the number at all. Is that right? You're going for the same number again? Yeah, did you think of number 5? You did? Brilliant. Okay, 3 in a row.
Yeah.
I can't believe that.
That completely threw me off.
Yeah. It's really crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
It's almost scary a little bit. It's like, I mean, like, if that could happen in everyday life, then, yeah. It was like maybe like our free choices aren't as free as we think they are.
Language is a powerful thing.
It's a clever little magic trick and a good illustration of how the language we hear can blend with the things we see to create strange and unexpected effects in our brains. It's time to go back to Kath Lockett, who we met earlier. She was born and raised in England, but bizarrely found herself speaking with what sounded like a foreign accent after her stroke.
The gentleman 2 seats back said, "Excuse me, are you visiting? Are you from Russia?" And I'm going, why do people keep telling me I sound strange?
Kath isn't alone in this experience. This is Richard Murray. At the age of just 29, he had a stroke that initially led to a complete loss of speech.
I was completely paralysed right side of the body, and I was unable to speak at all. I was just basically grunting and having to communicate by writing things down. I've had to really learn completely how to speak again.
Amazingly, as this footage taken soon after the stroke shows, Richard's speech was initially affected very severely. But although Richard couldn't speak, his ability to comprehend language was still fine.
I could completely understand what people were saying and knew what I wanted to say, but just physically couldn't make the movements.
Part of Richard's brain, yes, you guessed it, our friend Broca's area, the area that commands speech production, was likely to have been affected by his stroke, while sparing Wernicke's area, which deals with understanding and comprehension of language. Similar to the effect we demonstrated earlier with the TMS machine, where Magda had no trouble understanding the names of the months, March and April, but was simply unable to utter the correct sounds, it's this part of the brain that's thought to be compromised in patients who suffer from foreign accent syndrome.
March, June.
As Richard recovered, he had a foreign-sounding accent, but he's gradually getting his old English accent back again. Kath Lockett hasn't found it that easy, and it's made life very tough for her. Now Kath and Richard have decided to meet up at a local church to see how they might be able to support each other.
Hello, pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet a face. It's very difficult. You don't often meet yourself very often. There's no group for us to go to.
Myself, my speech has improved and my foreign accent, I guess, has diminished over the past few years. The way I speak now is not from a natural area in the brain, so I have to think about where to put my mouth and tongue and lips and so on to make each sound, to then make each word. The first 4 words I learned was hi, bye, yes and no, to be able to go and do shopping and things like that. So there's a few cases where I would be in the supermarket and if the cashier asked me a question that wasn't a yes or no answer, I would just shrug my shoulders and people in the queue behind me say, foreigners.
Sometimes you go in a place and they were very rude to you.
Yeah.
And they treat you like a foreigner.
Yeah.
And they think you are more or less a nuisance.
Living with a speech impediment that people think is a foreign accent can be very upsetting. And for people like Kath, the only link they have with their past voice are old recordings, such as the one Kath has kept of herself on a radio phone-in.
I've bought a recording of myself before. So, would you like to listen?
Oh, of course, yes.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
She's trapped in here, you know.
Okay.
Part of it was because the drivers were giving destinations unpractical to get back into Stafford to pick the kids up. So then they've had a better time given them, which does a knock-on effect.
Kath's tape is all she has left of her old voice. It's very precious to her. Losing the voice on the tape has caused her great sadness.
I'm not there anymore. My voice is never there anymore.
Yeah.
I've got used to it a little bit, but it's taken its toll on me.
Yeah. It's, again, been fascinating to meet you, and well, hopefully we'll keep in touch now, because you're the first person I've met over the last 10 years.
No, it's difficult. You don't meet yourself very often,
No,
do you?
absolutely.
You know, I appreciate you coming to see me, and I love that. It's been lovely. Thank you very much indeed. And you.
Foreign accent syndrome shows just how much the way we speak can affect our identity and the way we see ourselves. Such a shift in the way someone speaks and the ease with which they can express themselves can be fundamentally altering to their personality.
And it doesn't have to be a full in-your-face difference in the person's speech, just detecting a slightly different vowel sound or a slightly different intonation pattern, and you're already thinking, this person's not from around here.
But foreign accent syndrome can also be very revealing about how the rest of us actually perceive speech.
One of the interesting things is that one listener will hear an Italian accent, but another listener will hear a French accent. And that's because different listeners are tuning into different aspects of the change in the person's speech.
Most of us barely spare a moment to consider how our brains accomplish the act of speaking, but it's one of the most complex actions we perform. In that regard, Richard, Rory and Kath each give us a valuable insight into how our own brains process language. Whether it's reading, writing or speaking, our brains devote huge resources to language and have an almost instinctive capacity for it. The language centers in the brain are being decoded in ever greater detail, allowing us to better understand how we humans communicate and what happens when that ability breaks down.
June.
It's one of the most exciting areas of neuroscientific investigation, and the impact of future research could be huge. If science is successful in its attempts to unravel the secrets of language, it could even bring us a step closer to understanding what makes us human.